Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel at NDN Nigeria. Click on the subscribe button and be the first to get notifications.
In continuation of our 4-part documentary series that tells the story of Nigeria's foremost intervention agency, the Niger Delta Development Commission (Nddc), from establishment back in the year 2000 till date, exactly 25 years later, we now bring you part 3, which explores the many challenges and dark times of the Nddc.
Development, transformation,
In the year 2000, President Olusegun Obasanjo established an interventionist agency for the oil-producing Niger Delta region, known as the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC. It was created as a special purpose vehicle to fast-track the development of the Niger Delta, tackle socio-economic challenges, and promote peace, stability, and prosperity in the region. The NDDC was received with great hopes and anticipation, but like many new initiatives, the Commission faced some early obstacles that slowed its smooth takeoff. One of the first challenges was a disagreement between President Obasanjo and the National Assembly. Both the executive and legislature could not quite agree on the structure and operations of the NDDC, so much so that when the National Assembly sent the NDDC bill to the president, he withheld his assent. The National Assembly members, led by President of the Senate Dr. Chuba Okadigo and House Speaker Gali Umar Naba, promptly withdrew the bill and passed it into law with a 2/3 majority of both houses, effectively making the establishment of the NDDC an act of parliament. Angered by this face-off with the National Assembly, President Obasanjo delayed the inauguration of the board and management of the commission till the 21st of December 2000. Upon resumption by the board and management of the interventionist agency, they immediately embarked on what they termed quick impact projects to bring some respite to an otherwise neglected and marginalized region. These projects include roads, bridges, jetties, shore protection, canalization, land reclamation, electricity, water, and building for schools, hostels, and hospitals. From data available between January 2001 and January 2003, the NDDC, with an estimated funding of 47 billion naira from various sources, awarded about 700 contracts, of which 358 were completed by June 2003. This rather proactive disposition of the NDDC in its early days set it on a path of confrontation with state governors in the region, who were a little confused about the roles and responsibilities of NDDC versus those of subnational governments. However, the first board and management of the NDDC took deliberate steps to clear the air. They made it clear that the commission was not in competition with the state governments, but was instead meant to complement their efforts and collaborate on development projects that would transform the entire region.
We would like to complement the efforts of the state government and local government and federal government, not duplication. We want to avoid duplication.
Beyond just word of mouth, the commission began to deliver results, which were seen in the initiation and completion of major projects across states in the region, as well as the implementation of several programs to improve the lot of the people. State governors who had been at cross purposes were invited to inaugurate some of these projects delivered in their states. For example, during a project commissioning in Bayelsa State, the then governor DSP Alamesia, who came to see the impact the NDDC was making, abandoned previous grievances and went on to commend the commission by giving his assurance for continued support for its work in the Niger Delta.
As the chief security officer of this state, there was actually nothing I repeat, nothing that was happening in this state that I don't know. But there was a missing gap. There was no proper coordination, no consultation with the state government. That was the main problem. I think it's over now. There is no chief executive that will see these two projects have commissioned that will not be happy with the commission. I assure you that they will not sleep till they give money to NDDC.
So also was it in Akwa Ibom State, where architect Victor Obong Atta recognized the strides and the mission of the then fledgling commission.
The NDDC was set up to complement the development efforts of the government at the state and local government levels through direct intervention by embarking on projects that will bring succor to the people in the Niger Delta states. It is gratifying to observe that the projects selected for commissioning so far are in line with that vision.
These did not completely put paid to all the bad blood between the NDDC and state government, but to some extent brought about some relative understanding between the Pioneer Board and the governor serving at the time. The NDDC undoubtedly went on to leave an indelible mark across every nook and cranny of the oil-rich Niger Delta region, with almost all communities across main city centers far-flung and hard-to-reach areas bearing the signage of the NDDC.
Transformation, Niger Delta,
Despite its strong will and sincere desire to bring development to the Niger Delta, the NDDC was soon confronted with the issue of inadequate funding, which became a major challenge primarily because of the overwhelming deficits in development across the region. This ranges from complete absence of critical infrastructure such as roads and bridges to connect isolated communities to the failing healthcare facilities, schools infrastructure and other social amenities. The NDDC Establishment Act Section 14 subsection 2 as amended states that the commission would be funded by the federal government through the contribution of 15% of the total monthly statutory allocations to the 9 member states. 3% of the total annual budget of any oil and gas producing company operating onshore and offshore in the region, and 50% of the ecological funds to member states. These and probably other funds that may come into the coffers of the NDDC is to enable the interventionist agency meet the yearnings of the people in the region and bridge the infrastructure gap in the country's oil belt. However, regrettably, from the early days of the NDDC, both the federal government and the oil and gas companies have consistently fallen short in its remittances to the commission. Available data shows that from the inception of the interventionist agency in 2000 to this day, the federal government owes NDDC over 2 trillion naira in statutory allocations, while the oil and gas companies owe over $5 billion.
The last count, the IOCs were owing about $5.6 billion and 649 billion naira to the Niger Delta Development Commission. So people talk about NDDC, but a lot of people are not aware that the monies are not coming in because these people have failed to do what they would have done. And then you are now forced to depend on the 50, 60, 80 billion a year budgeted by the federal government as statutory contribution. So people are not aware. So there's no way most of those your projects could have been completed. Something they would never have dared to do in their various countries. So it would have amounted to trade malpractices. But they continue to do it here with reckless abandon. This Senate will check it.
These funding gaps have significantly hampered the NDDC's ability to undertake and complete development projects in the Niger Delta region, especially with its difficult terrain and widespread environmental and ecological conditions that demands even more funds to attend to. The Commission could not pay contractors as at when due, a situation which is largely responsible for the abandonment of about 13,000 projects by contractors in the region. Apart from this, the Commission was also caught in the mix of contract and contractor scam, a complicated situation where some projects only exist on paper without any sites for its execution, while in some other cases, contractors sell their contract awards to other people or outrightly abandon project sites after receiving mobilizations and other payments. This intricately woven web of illegality created a cloud of corruption that hung over the NDDC for many years. In its bid to correct this anomaly, the NDDC a few years ago cancelled a total of 1,301 projects awarded between 2000 and 2019, where contractors were paid but failed to move to site. The contractors involved were asked to refund the money to the NDDC's account at the Central Bank of Nigeria.
The forensic audit report is being implemented in phases, and so far we've taken actions to terminate some of the contracts which were awarded and did not follow due process, or for which mobilization advances had been received but work had not commenced, or contracts which virtually had been abandoned.
The NDDC was also plagued by several controversies involving allegations of financial mismanagement and misconduct by past leaders of the Commission. Some of them were publicly questioned to account for their time in office. In one case, a former managing director of the Commission, Professor Kemebradi Kumo Ponde, was grilled at the National Assembly.
From the time this interim management committee has been set up, how much has the interim management committee received?
We get about 6.4 billion monthly, which stopped in June. Well, not anything since June. Then we have some payments from the oil companies, very little.
During the session, after several tense exchanges, the MD collapsed while answering questions, a moment captured live on national television. The extra scrutiny of Professor Ponde by the National Assembly members was because Professor Ponde had fingered them as a major problem of the NDDC by their corrupt intervention in the day-to-day running of the Commission.
When I came in to the IMC on the 19th of February, the 2019 and 2020 budgets had already been transmitted to the National Assembly. So the 2019 budget was now laid before both chambers and now approved. Now, there's a process after approval. There has to be harmonization of both budgets before they are now signed. So for that to be done, we were told to pay for certain contracts. If not, the harmonization meeting will not take place. From what we are hearing from staff here, it's been a regular thing all over the years. You have to accede to them or you don't get a budget. It is as if we are castigating the entire National Assembly. No, it is those committees and those committee chairmen that are trying to bring the entire National Assembly to this level of disrepute.
This strained relationship also caused significant delays in the passage of the Commission's budget. In fact, in some years, for example 2019, the NDDC operated without an approved budget. Even more recently, the budgets for 2021, 2022 and 2023 were all passed in 2023. This has led to the Commission's budget cycle remaining irregular and not aligned with the January to December calendar used by most government agencies. It was not only external crisis that hindered the smooth running of the Regional Development Agency and affected service delivery across the region. The NDDC was also challenged by issues of internal conflict and unresolved differences, especially between some past governing boards and the management of the Commission that sometimes played out even in the media. This power struggle and clash of roles between the board and management went against the clear provisions of the NDDC Act, which states that the board is responsible for providing strategic policy direction, while management handles the day-to-day operations of the commission. Just as the popular saying goes, a house divided against itself cannot stand. These internal battles left a bad taste in the mouth and often hindered progress and activities of the Commission in the region. Another major challenge that has slowed down the NDDC since its creation is the heavy political interference in the operations of the Commission. Instead of being seen as an interventionist agency created to bring peace and development to the Niger Delta, the NDDC was often treated like a political reward center, a place to settle allies and cronies. Appointments into the board and management of the commission had to be politically correct or it would face crisis of opposition. In fact, some boards were appointed and never sworn in, like the Pius Odubu and Bernard Okumagba board, which was nominated by President Buhari, screened but never inaugurated. Observers say this political interference showed up in many ways, from control over appointments to influence on contract awards and even manipulation of funds by the powerful political actors.
And this has become a cash cow for politicians. They'll be cutting away in every election 10 billion, 20 billion. As the governor of Nigeria, we met Mr. President. We told Mr. President, NDC is finished. I was in that meeting. We told Mr. President, NDC is finished. It's so corrupt, and therefore, there must be a surgical operation.
The truth is that there's a lot of pressure from Abuja. There is too much pressure, stifling pressure on NDDC from Abuja. Anybody who becomes an executive in NDDC has to do an Abuja trip at least once a week. It is not possible to succeed that way. You have to allow them operational autonomy. You have to give them breathing space.
This situation led to one of the biggest challenges the NDDC has faced over the years, which is instability and very high turnover in its board and management. According to Section 5, Subsection 2 of the NDDC Act, the chairman and other members of the board, other than ex-official members, shall hold office for a term of 4 years in the first instance and may be reappointed for a further term of 4 years and no more. However, it's no secret that no board has ever completed its full tenure since the inception of the commission. Even the pioneer board, which enjoyed a bit more stability, still saw its managing director, Engineer Godwin Omene, removed before the end of his term, along with a few other members. Beyond occasional reshuffling, there came a time when the constitutional provision for a full board was completely abandoned. Instead, the commission was run by sole administrators, interim management and acting managing directors, a practice that was in clear violation of the NDDC Act. This means that in its 25 years of existence, the NDDC should have had at most 7 boards. However, the reality tells a different story. The Commission has had about 17 chief executives, with just 3 serving between 2000 and 2009, while the remaining 14 have served from 2010 to date, most of them in acting capacity. This high turnover was especially frequent during the 8-year tenure of President Muhammadu Buhari, leading to instability in leadership and affecting the Commission's ability to deliver on its core mandate. Many, including the current Managing Director, Dr. Samuel Obuku, shared how detrimental this has been on service delivery in the region.
When you talk about 7th governing board, that means for the life of NDDC, you're supposed to have 7 managing directors. But you imagine, from 2015 till date, I'm the number 9 MD of NDDC. That is to tell you the level of instability in NDDC.
This constant leadership uncertainty hampered service delivery across the Niger Delta and made it difficult for the Commission to follow through on its mandate effectively.
There are quite a number of projects that were started in those days, but the projects are not completed. They are abandoned. It may not necessarily be because the people there did not want to complete them, but one of the issues that we observe is that the board of NDDC, after 1-2 years, that board is sacked. The next thing you hear is sole administrator. If you don't hear sole administrator, you have a management committee. And those are purely aberrations. They are not in tandem with the provisions of the act. And at the end of the day, what do we expect? There will be no meaningful achievements in the region. Who suffer? It is the people of Niger Delta that suffers.
Beyond the impact on development, the leadership instability and mismanagement at the NDDC also eroded public trust in the Commission. Many people began to feel that the NDDC had become insensitive to their struggles, and the early hopes they had were slowly dashed. As more projects were abandoned and left uncompleted, frustration grew. People across the region began to clamor for a complete overhaul of the Commission. They were simply tired of the financial irregularities and lack of accountability that have become associated with the NDDC. For years, their cries seemed to fall on deaf ears until President Muhammadu Buhari responded in 2019 by ordering a forensic audit of the NDDC.
The amount of money which the federal government is religiously allocating to NDDC, we would like to see the results on the ground, and those that are responsible for that, I think, will eventually be asked to explain certain issues.
Anybody who says there should be no forensic audit, then that fellow has a problem, and that fellow is an enemy of the Niger Delta.
I am one of those, along with the Niger Delta people, clamoring for the outcome of the forensic audit. We need it, so that we know how many contractors were paid and they didn't complete their project, or how many contractors were not paid. Forensic audit is the way out.
The aim was to restore public confidence and ensure accountability, especially regarding the estimated 6 trillion naira allocated to the Commission between 2001 and 2019. The forensic audit team visited communities across the 9 oil-producing states, reviewed thousands of documents and inspected projects on the ground. After over a year of work, the final report was submitted to President Buhari in September 2021. Although the full report has not been made public and no one has been openly indicted or prosecuted, but the audit confirmed the allegations of serious financial recklessness and widespread project failures. Shockingly, it revealed that over 13,000 projects were either abandoned or uncompleted across the oil-rich Niger Delta. This highlights the huge infrastructure gap in the Niger Delta and how the NDDC has struggled to close that gap and improve the living conditions of the people. To the disappointment of many, what once seemed like a response to the region's long-standing cries for development, as recommended by the Sir Henry Willings Commission in 1957, which identified the Niger Delta as a special area in need of special attention, has been overshadowed by challenges and mismanagement. However, in spite of these setbacks, the NDDC has made noticeable impact across the region in its effort to bridge the infrastructure gap and empower its people, while ensuring that the region remains peaceful and prosperous. As the Commission celebrates its Silver Jubilee, it has indeed come full circle. Today, a true democrat and a respecter of the rule of law, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu now commands the reins of power, and accordingly, for the first time in a long while, he has appointed a complete board and management for the NDDC. He has also ensured that the Commission operates without undue interference. Today, the NDDC is experiencing a rebirth under the leadership of Dr. Samuel Obuku as Managing Director and Mr. Chiedu Ibie as Board Chairman. Together, they are rebranding and repositioning the agency, shifting leadership focus from transactions to transformation, and working to deliver services to the Niger Delta people in line with globally accepted standards. That is why in 2 years, the current board and management have achieved much more than other boards have achieved in the last 10 years. Indeed, this is a new dawn for the NDDC. This would be the focus of our fourth and final episode of NDDC at 25.
Inside the Niger Delta,